scrape the windshield.
Good evening, and welcome to another exciting meeting of the Charlton Water and Sewer Commission. Today is February 25th, 2019, and we'll start our meeting as usual. First of all, anybody here for public forum? Yes, sir, come forward and state your name and tell us what you'd like to know. Ask us what you'd like to know.
Good evening,
Just, Mr. Chair. Ed, we have this as an agenda item?
I understand this is a different item.
Okay.
Okay, so I have an agenda item that I sent an email to you guys
Yep.
about. This is something else I just wanted to bring to your attention, because you guys are the Water Sewer Commission,
Yep.
and just point out a few things that I noticed when I was reviewing certain things for the upcoming VGG project. My name is Ed Kochling. I live at 47 Hanson Road. So a couple of things I wanted to point out to you is, and I don't know if there's anything you can do about it, but just to get it on your list of things to think about, I guess, is that currently there is a proposed subdivision project for VGG over on Old Worcester Road. And one of the things that I noticed when I was reviewing the documents was that the current ExxonMobil water plans actually show a hydrant being installed right in the middle of the proposed roadway over there. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that you might want to talk to ExxonMobil and actually have that moved 30, 40 feet out of the way, just in case that project does get approved. You don't have a conflict with that. The other thing that I noticed about that hydrant, and I didn't take a look at the other hydrants, but one of the things that struck me is that it's coming off the water service sort of just off the edge of pavement. And one of the things that I've learned working in the water department in the city of Worcester is that when you have the opportunity with hydrants, you actually want to step them back off the edge of pavement for 6, 7, 8 feet in situations along paved roads like this, so that they don't get hit by the plow. So that would be just something I wanted to point out, that you might want to talk to ExxonMobil about. It's nothing to do when they're out there doing it. It's obviously a different game changer when you have to go back and do it later. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Another item that I noticed was that currently the VGG project before the town is showing L. Turner Drive as a driveway and not a public road. And the current ExxonMobil plans show a 4-inch ductile iron pipe, line going for several hundred feet with a hydrant on it up that road or driveway. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure, I'm under the impression that ExxonMobil assumed that that road was a public road, but the attorney, who is very astute from VGG, has come to the planning board meetings pointing out that he doesn't believe it is a public road. And on their plans for their subdivision plan, for example, it clearly points out that on their plans anyway, that the road is not a road, it is a driveway. And so I'm not sure why, if it is a driveway, why we would be installing a 4-inch main as part of that water main project on that road. So I would ask the commission to again, use due diligence here and look into or find out exactly what the designation of that road is. If it is truly a public road, fantastic, and put the water main in as proposed, that makes a whole lot of sense. If it turns out that it's not a public road and it's a driveway, I'm not so sure we have the authorization to go in there and put town infrastructure, what you guys think is town infrastructure, on that road.
Are you able to leave us with a list of all your questions tonight, Ed?
I did not. I mean, they're just sort of my notes.
Okay.
And so what I can do is I can email you a copy and
Yeah, if you wouldn't
point
mind
those,
that, I
point
think
those
that would be
items out.
great. Then what we can do is just have Peter or Sue just ask, like this question probably pertains to Jerry and his list of accepted roads.
Planning board, yes.
Town clerk.
Okay.
It depends.
Town,
who you ask.
town,
Well,
town cl-
yeah, we can get
town
it
clerk.
headed
I
in the
guess
right
what I'm saying
direction.
is there seems to be this cloud over whether L Turner Road is actually public or is a driveway. And I'm not sure which it is, but if it's a public road, then it's a public road, and it should be shown on the applicant's plans that it's a public road. If it's a driveway, well, then I'm not so sure we have the right, or ExxonMobil would have the right to go onto a driveway, or why would they? Why wouldn't they put their resources to some other benefit for the town?
Great question, right
Yeah,
there.
Peter, can you clarify or elaborate on any of that?
Well, I think, I'd recommend that we take everything under advisement, because none of this was on our agenda, and we can bring it up. I have notes for pretty much Ed's three questions. The first question I have is the hydrant proposed in the middle of the subdivision road for VGG's proposed subdivision.
Yep.
The second question was the hydrant is shown just off the edge of pavement. It should be set back further than that. And the third question is, L Turner Drive is currently being discussed as being a driveway, not a town road, so why would that require a 4-inch water main extension going up and on private property?
That, and I'm pretty sure, I don't think, that, you have when it's a project like this, and it's kind of a little off, it's not a public project per se, but it kind of is, because it's ExxonMobil. My guess is they just assumed they would run the 4-inch main up this road because it's a public road. I don't know if the town actually has, the permission or right to go on a public road and put infrastructure in. So, I mean, we're not,
So the town's not installing it, whether or not we would own it. So because, like I said, because it's not on the agenda, I have the notes. We'll try and get that information, put it on the next agenda. We'll let Mr. Carson know that it's gonna be on the agenda at that time, and we can discuss it then.
Okay,
and then I have one more question.
sure.
And that has to do with the pavement for the project. So when the ExxonMobil project, when they install the water main, my understanding is that they're going to repave the entire road? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so looking at this project that's before the planning board, the subdivision plan in particular, it is an extensive, as well as the other project, but the subdivision project is an extensive earthwork project that would appear to me anyway, if you're going to be, it's not a cut and fill project, it's a cut, and there's going to be thousands of yards, it looks like, coming out of that property. Is there any stipulations that the board would want to think about as far as trucking, heavy trucks like that being put on a brand-new pavement because, or possibly delaying doing the paving until that project is over if it was approved? Just from the point of view that we all know that you put new pavement down and then all of a sudden it just gets,
Good concern, yeah.
and I don't know how you go about that, but I just wanted to put that idea in your heads to say, look, you know what, if this project does get approved, it's something that you guys should be thinking about, because obviously, new pavement doesn't come around too often, and the last thing we want to do is have it damaged.
Just a couple comments. Peter, I suggest that you check with the town clerk as far as the town road, whether it is or isn't. The town clerk should be able to give you that answer. And it's not going to be found at the Worcester Registry. It's only going to be found at the town clerk's office. Next thing is Russ, in a project that he's mentioning, and thank you for all the information and the research, Ed. Obviously, they're going to be moving more than 500 yards of material from there. Would they need an earth removal permit from the selectmen?
I believe they would.
Not if it's part of their site plan.
No, not now, but when they go to remove it.
I would, again, because this isn't on your agenda, I'd recommend probably not discussing it at this time, and we can bring these concerns up when we have it on the agenda for discussion.
Okay, no, we're not making any decisions here.
Again, you can discuss it if you like, I would just recommend against.
Yeah, we're not making, like I said, we're not, thank you for the recommendation, but we're not making any decisions. Because as I understand the earth removal permit, you're allowed 500 yards per lot when you develop.
Unless you have site plan approval from the planning board with those grades, with existing grades and new
Okay,
grades approved.
okay, all right, that's fair.
Then you don't need
Okay,
plan, then you
okay.
don't need selectmen approval, is my understanding.
I
Okay.
believe that the bylaw for earthwork removal is exactly what Mr. Boria says. It's for people who do not have a planning board approval,
Okay.
with the assumption that planning board vets those rules and regulations that are in that bylaw. That's, I believe, how it works.
Yep.
So I only have one other thing to bring up, and again, it's just throwing this out there, is that project, the subdivision project, is requiring sewer services and a couple of 2-inch water services, as well as a 6-inch water service, which I'm not really sure what that's for. But it's something that you might want to consider. Again, I know the ExxonMobil project is going to be going by here by next year. You might want to, if this project was to get approved, reach out to the developer and get those things off the road, again, before it's paved, because you don't want to pave the road and then have to come back and do that work.
Peter, the final clay pavement on Old Worcester Road is not going to happen this construction season, the final. It would be the year after.
Correct.
Okay.
I guess my point is if the stars align here, where the project was to get approved, and the ExxonMobil project is going forward. For example, when you get to the 6-inch service that they're looking for, you wouldn't want to do a cut-in after the fact. You'd want to install a T as you go by. You know what I mean? And alter that contract so that it's a better job for the town and for the for the board. Just a thought. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. You want to get our business over with first, or I'll go right to John Oatley and.
Is there anybody else here for public forum? I don't know.
This is the only one at the time, so,
I think John's waiting for Zach, the new
Sure.
operator, to show up as well. so
okay.
if-
Oh,
Is that a pump station? We have a
Oh,
pump
no.
station issue, so I'm perfectly prepared to do it without him. We can show it later, or we can
We'll do the
well, we got
minutes and
5 or
warrants.
10 minutes of our own business we can take care of while you wait, so. All right, then we'll take this time to pay some bills. And any other warrants you have, Mr. Jennings?
Sure, first I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of February 11th, 2019, as printed.
Can I hear a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion on that? Minutes of February 11th, which is our last meeting. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Next, I'll ask that we make a motion to accept the warrants for review and signature as follows. Charlton Oil, $162.05. Osterman Propane, $1,708.05. Osterman Propane, $2,687.68. Town of Charlton, $46,992.01. WB Mason, $10.22. E.J. Prescott, $1,966.50. Peter Starkis, $747.50, for a grand total of $54,274.01.
Any discussion on any of them? If not, I do. Peter, I wanted to ask about the town of Charlton that we owe almost $47,000 to.
Yes.
Now, I assume now we're buying our electricity through them, through the town, but can you explain it? And this is also a, 6-month?
Correct. So this is a
Uh,
6-month period.
Yep,
What happens is we get our electric bills mailed to us for the treatment plant and all 9 or 11 pump stations. We submit those electric bills to the town, and they, the selectman's office take those, and they apply credits based on the power purchase agreement we have with one of the solar developers that they're working with. So, Kara from the selectman's office takes those invoices, changes what our bill was, and provides us with a new total. So the total for all of the accounts without the discount was $79,008 approximately.
would we have paid that if we
would have had
didn't?
to pay without the
Okay.
discount.
So that's approximately 8,000, well, not that, this is approximately $8,000 a month. And it would have been closer to $11,000 a month, or 12 even. Okay,
So we do see some good cost savings because of that. I believe it's a power purchase agreement. I'm not sure exactly which solar developer they have it with or how it works. All I know is for the past, I think, 2 years, we've been submitting the National Grid invoices to the selectman's office. They process them, and then they send us an invoice like we just received for either a 3-month or 6-month window, and then we just pay for the power that way.
Is it gonna be usually 6 months, or? Yeah, I know you
It's
said
been
3 or
3 months
6.
in the past. I don't know why it was 6
Yeah,
months this
okay.
time.
It's just
Wherever.
a big nugget to hit in one month, so.
It is, but luckily it's in the O and M account. We're
Yeah.
carrying that much, so it's set aside
Okay.
and we have it to pay it.
Any other discussion on all of these bills?
Mr. Chairman, just one other, Peter, the other company we were considering for propane,
Yes,
was that contract gonna be 150 a gallon
yes,
fixed?
yes.
Okay, so we're,
That's why we haven't
we're in good
changed.
shape.
Yes, we've been
Okay.
doing pretty good this year.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Refresh my immediate memory, did we get a second on that motion?
No, we did not.
Oh,
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion on it? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are you in amorphous?
No.
That's it. Well, it doesn't seem the time has helped you too much, John, but
He's pumping it down slowly, so I think he'll be disappointed he's.
Oh, I'm sure.
Good thing, no, he's pretty excited.
Yeah.
Zach's been doing very well for his first week and a half here.
Yeah, we're experiencing we had a high wet well alarm at that station we were at this morning.
No service.
Yeah, it looks like one of the floats, the one that controls the on, has frayed. Probably just from age, we must have disturbed it with it, you know what I mean? So what he's gonna do is he's gonna pump it down tonight and then go after it in the morning with an electrician. There's no sense trying to be out there. I was just out there, it's freezing out. Well, good evening, everyone. Like I said, Zach does apologize for not being here. I know he was looking forward to his first monthly meeting with all of you. I'll just go through the monthly report. This, again, is a report that was for the period of time that Zach was not in charge, so you'll see the names are still listed as those that were employed at the time of January. As far as health and safety, there were no safety accidents or incidents for the month of January, and the monthly safety Veolia checklist was completed. That includes fire extinguishers and all that sort of thing. The training for the month was on hazardous communication, which is basically our right-to-know training, and that's provided by an online J.J. Keller training module. As far as compliance was concerned, there were no NIPD's permit exceedances for January, and there's a facility performance report attached for compliance. Operations and maintenance activities. The weekly and monthly maintenance checklists were complete. The generator was exercised under full load, and all preventative work orders that are part of our computerized maintenance management system were completed. And the monthly did not have any, and the critical alarms were also tested with no issues noted. For the pump stations, all the pump station alarms were tested and were working. Pump stations were also exercised, the generators under full load. And the MTAs were both sampled on the 1st and the 16th of January. I guess on January 31st, we did receive a North Main Street high-level pump alarm. No issues or bypasses related to that. Moving on to the collection system, there were 4 grinder pump calls during the month of January. First one reports the electrical side was fine, the pump was replaced, and this was an upgraded station. Sunset Drive had a high alarm, float was stuck due to a buildup of grease, the grease was removed and the pump was placed back into service. This too was an upgraded system. Another Sunset Drive, high level, another grease buildup caused the floats to malfunction, the grease was removed. Floats were cleaned and the pump was placed back into service. This too is an upgraded system. And then the last one was Glen Echo Drive, had another high alarm. It says false alarm for a wet well caused by water inside the control box. The water was removed and the box was dried out. And then there were 10 dig safes for the month of January. So that's it. Like I said, I did want to report that Zach's at a pump station right now. That's the North Sturbridge Road pump station. We discovered one of the force mains from the pump coming out of the well had separated from its pipe. So one of the pumps was actually just recirculating in the wet well. We confirmed that today by pumping the wet well all the way down, and in doing so, we more than likely caused one of the floats to come, probably because of age, but, once you bring it all the way down, it probably caused some fraying of the wires. So that's what Zach's doing right now. He's pumping that station down manually, and we'll have an electrician go out tomorrow and replace that float. Couple of additional remarks Zach wanted to report. At the last meeting, we had talked about that, replacing that flow meter at the MTA, and I know we'd received approval to replace it. However, when we went to actually place the order, the vendor indicated that meter had been discontinued. There is a replacement meter for it, a new model, but unfortunately, it's a slightly additional cost of $159.80 above what you had already authorized. So we didn't place that order until we came tonight asking for that additional $159 for the new replacement model.
Make a motion that we accept the additional cost totaling $2,505.60 for the meter.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
The other additional remark Zach wanted me to bring, or mention tonight, was on February 13th, we had a full load exercise of the facility, as we do every week. During that time, the transfer switch had tripped and didn't switch back to utility power. When it went back to utility, it caused a couple of the old VFDs, which are actually, we found out, older than 25 years each. Two of them, there were three altogether, two in service, one is a backup. The two that were in service tripped and could not be reset. The electrician came out, basically determined that they were both failed. He equates that to just the age of the VFDs. They couldn't take that shock or that transfer of power. Typically, VFDs last about 10 years. We've gotten 25 years out of these. But the recommendation is to replace two of the ones that have failed and keep the one that's still working in place, and that'll give you full redundancy for all your VFDs. And those are for the Comag sludge pumps. And Zach, we've got a quote with the Veolia discount for $3,937. It's attached, so you can see.
These are for the scum pumps. John.
Scum pump, sorry.
Not the Comag.
Say sludge pump.
But the VFDs that you're gonna order will be able to be used with the existing Comag VFDs. So we'll bring
Correct.
it up to
Yeah, it's the
date.
same type.
So there'll be redundancy if you needed to take one to replace one in a different area in an emergency.
Yeah, the ones we're replacing are 25 years old. The ones that we're recommending replacing with are, like Peter said, similar to what's already in place as part of the upgrade, so it'll be a full redundancy for those VFDs. And then there's a quote for the installation from the electrical company that provides us with that.
Make a motion that we pay for the replacement of the two VFDs at a cost, including installation, at $3,937.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Peter, we have funds available.
Yes.
Thank you.
If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 The other note of the report was Steve St. Jean, one of our operators at the plant, had given us his 2 weeks notice at the end of January. His last day was on February 14th. We have interviewed several candidates and made a selection of a candidate who accepted the position and is currently going through the onboarding process. So we expect to have him employed within the next 2 weeks. What we looked for in our candidate was someone with a lot of strong mechanical background. So this gentleman has that, as well as lives 10 minutes from the facility. So it's really nice to have someone local that can respond quickly to any emergencies at the plant. In the meantime, we're getting assistance from some of our other plants in the region. We've had several mechanics come in from Sturbridge as well as New London to assist during this period of transition. A couple other items I wanted to note. You may recall we had a situation where the headworks had flooded back early on. And we had batted around different ideas about how to prevent that from happening in the future. One of the ones that we arrived at was installing a very simple weir outside at the bar rack area and leaving the bypass valve open inside the building so that in the event that we had any sort of surcharging, it would just flow to that bar rack automatically as opposed to having to do it manually. We installed that and we tested it and it works perfectly. So it's a very cheap, low-cost solution to the plant to ever prevent that building from flooding. As you may recall, when it flooded, it took out the blowers and several other pieces of equipment inside the building. There is a flood alarm, but by the time you get there, it's almost too late. So Zach will have some pictures of that. We tested it this morning. It worked fine. So we're real confident to be able to bring that solution to you at very, minor cost to just install it there. I'm happy to report that both of the offline RBCs are now online and functioning. Right now, they're in what's called a recirc mode, where they're basically the flow is going through them, but recirculating back to the plant until they build up enough biomass on them to be able to effectively treat the wastewater that they're receiving, and then we'll put them in series with the rest of them. But again, we were able to resurrect those 2 failed RBCs for a relatively inexpensive survey. We did that condition assessment and then just some minor repairs to the plumbing. Right now, we're in the process of evaluating what type of covers we want to put on them. But it's going to be several months before they're fully activated, so we have some time to make a good decision on what type of cover we want. We do have pricing for the existing covers that are there. It's a big number. It's about $100,000. And we just think that there's probably less cost, there's a more cost-effective solution than just going with those all-weather outside covers that you currently have. Simply because they're designed for snow load, wind load, rain load, and you don't have any of that inside the building. Right now, we just need humidity control, which I think we can do much cheaper and more cost-effective. But more to report on that. So when you go into the plant, you'll see the RBCs are running, they're just not covered. In the meantime, we're keeping an eye on the humidity, making sure we don't have any issues there, so.
If I may, so with those 2 running right now, that gives us a total of 8,
10.
10 that are within the building?
No,
Or is
8
it-
inside, 2
Okay,
outside,
right,
yeah.
okay, all right. And,
You're at full capacity.
yeah, so the covers that we put on the 6 that are inside, you're saying to duplicate just 2 of them, it's gonna be $100,000?
We got, roughly, we got pricing from the vendor. They were about $27,000 each, just for the covers and then installation and.
I don't recall us paying that much in the past. No, we didn't.
You
I know we
might have
did.
had some economies of scale because you purchased 6 of them, but
Right.
the covers alone, I believe, cost you around $20,000 to $24,000 back then. That was back in 2000, that was almost 10 years ago.
No, it's not long ago. No, I mean, no, it's because,
The upgrade was done in 2009.
yeah, I know, but we didn't put them on in the
You
upgrade.
didn't put the covers on as part of the upgrade?
No, we did it part of the fact that
Oh.
Frank was ready to walk off the job because it was a dangerous situation with the humidity problem we had. Yeah.
So the paperwork I saw, I believe, like John said, that the covers back then were approximately $20,000 plus labor to install. And the labor to install plus the small
Okay. Well,
mechanical pumps.
I would have to look in the minutes. All right, so what you're saying
Yeah,
is,
and we're not ruling out going with that cover. I'm just
Yeah.
looking at other alternatives to
For sure.
provide to you and see if there's just a lower, because like I said, those covers are beautiful, they're great, they'll last forever. They're just an all-weather outside cover. They only make that type, the vendor does. So it's kind of a one-size-fits-all. And I think there's probably a lower cost solution and save the capital for doing some other things you don't have, and need.
what has the startup of those 2 uncovered RBCs caused as far as the relative humidity within the building?
It's not noticeable.
It's negligible. I would notice it in August, though.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we do have dehumidifier. We'll have a solution long before then.
yeah.
And I wish I had one today, I just don't. But
Okay.
probably by the next meeting, I'll have some other suggestions. We're trying to get some quoting.
Yeah, I'm not trying to squeeze out of this, but if we had to put it off, I think we could put it off because of, we have dehumidifiers, and the other thing is, we have those huge fans that we didn't have before,
That's correct.
which would certainly reduce the humidity level.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of odor you get from them as well. It's not offensive, well, at least not to me.
Right.
You know, the covers you have are, you know, I mean, they're pretty enclosed, and there's a positive ventilation coming off of them, so besides just humidity and atmospheric things, you would generate a slight little odor inside the building from
So
them.
getting back to the two RBCs, they're probably, you give them another 60 to 90 days to be totally seeded, and they will then become effective.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit slower in the winter. The colder temperatures prevents the bacteria from growing as fast.
Yeah.
But we've got time until the nitrogen season begins in the early summer, so.
Okay.
And in effect, what we've given you is 20% more capacity, you know, so that's big,
20% more.
yeah.
And where is the biggest area? Is it in the nitrogen?
Yeah, the removal of ammonia,
Removal of ammonia,
yeah.
okay, okay. And the system that is being installed at the brewery right now, that's for removal of BODs?
Correct.
Okay. It'd be interesting to keep an eye on that to see how effective that's gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, we fully, I mean, it's a pretty simple concept, but very complicated in design, right? You know, it's just using anaerobic bacteria to feed on the BOD from the, but obviously making
Yeah.
sure you've got the right conditions to encourage that sort of growth, I think is the important thing, you know, so.
Is that something you think at some point in time we may consider?
At the treatment
Right,
plant?
yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think depending on, right now, I think the plant will achieve its ammonia level. It's whether or not you have to reduce nitrogen,
Yeah,
which, you know, ammonia gets converted to nitrate, and then that gets released into the receiving water. Whether or not you'll ever see a nitrate reduction requirement in your permit, then that would require a plant upgrade. What they're designing for the brewery is an anaerobic system. It's basically a digester, really is what it is.
okay.
And
Thank
they're
you very
gonna
much.
produce gas and make energy, and, you know, it's a nice little package plant.
Coincidentally, today, John, I got a couple of catalogs in from Clearspan. I don't know if I can get it to you. I don't know if it's any help to you. I did not get a chance to look through it, but it certainly would be one source of
Oh, that's
inexpensive.
exactly what I'm thinking.
That's the one yeah, so.
No, and that's, Peter and I have had conversations, you know, a simple galvanized structure with some sort of, you know, heavy plastic material, whether it's shrink wrapped or tight.
Is it really a lanai?
So,
Is that what they call them down in Florida? They
Yeah.
cover the pool and
It's up to
everything?
be a half round, be like a Quonset hut.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But, you know, I mean, the order of magnitudes, you know, 1/10 of what you could possibly look to spend on hard covers, so. And with all the needs of the plant, particularly one of the things I'd like to talk about is the caustic system. You know, you've got other places to spend, you know, capital on things that are much more desperate for the project. You may recall that during the recent headwork study conducted by Ty and Bond, the biggest recommendation was the ability to add alkalinity to be able to fully take advantage of our nitrification process. My CPM group is in the process of developing some pricing for that system. We looked at 3 systems, one a silo. We talked about this a little bit last month. One, a dry feeder system inside the headworks, similar to what we're doing now by hand, and then a liquid system inside of the main building, and which would supplement the caustic system that's currently in place to take care of pH. So probably, definitely by next meeting, my guy will be in and we'll present some of those recommendations and costs associated with that upgrade. Now, that's the final piece in being able to maximize our ammonia removal for the plant. That's being able to add enough alkalinity into the water so that we can maintain the right pH and the bugs can do their job more effectively.
John, should we be concerned with total copper? It's at 17 as far as the average monthly, and the limitation is 20.
Yeah, copper is the one that we've always been meeting, but, you know, not a lot of room. What Zach is doing right now is doing some some pre-COMAG metals testing to see how much removal, if any, we're getting through the COMAG, but also to see what, if any, are we introducing potentially using ferric chloride into the system. Ferric chloride is an acid that's used for it's used for the chemistry to remove the phosphorus. It's manufactured by taking acid and cleaning steel. So there are some trace metals in that. So right now, we're just doing an analysis to see exactly where the copper is and whether or not we're removing it through COMAG or introducing it through COMAG or whatever. So definitely more to come on that. One of the strategies we may look at is doing a multi-point application for ferric. You're set up to do it, to see if we can get some of the metals to drop out in the sludge in the clarifier.
It's my understanding that this time of year, January, February, the levels of copper always increase for some undetermined reason at this time, so. It'll be interesting to see what Zach can find, if he can follow through with that bench testing. See if he can come up with a solution.
It could be, you know, one of the things we could look at is what the drinking water pH is at right now. They might be changing seasonally. I'm not sure, it's just a speculation, but, you know, we could certainly take a look at what the, you know, the water pH chemistry is. Obviously, the lower the pH, the more leaching of metals you could get from plumbing. But yeah, copper is of concern because it's so close to the limit. And hopefully with the new permit, they won't reduce it. So, I can tell you that the neighboring town of Sturbridge is struggling with meeting its new zinc limit. We've been doing a pilot test for about 2 years now over there, trying to come up with a solution using their COMAG system. We've recently just done a 2-month pilot with a sulfide addition. It's Evocor is the company that owns COMAG. They've come up with a new suite of chemistry to try to drop zinc out in the COMAG system, and we've seen some really good results. So that may be an approach for metals here as well. So be happy to share those results with you when they become published. But we're seeing some good zinc removal through an addition of another chemical. And then I did just mention about North Sturbridge Road. We do have a pump problem there. Zach's out there now, but we should have that corrected by, well, we'll have the float corrected by tomorrow. The repair to the force main will probably take some time. I'll have to get somebody in there. It's a confined space entry and reattach the pipe. It looks as though the pipe I have a bunch of pictures, I've shared them with Peter, but it looks like the pipe just separated from its coupling, so maybe it wasn't glued effectively or what, but it wasn't sheared. It was really just slid right out. And that's below the water level, so we think that, that when we alternating the pumps, that pump was just recirculating itself in the well. So,
Peter, we have one of those readers in that pump station. I think we have them in all our pump stations.
Hour meter?
No, more than, yes, it is an hour meter. How, did anyone check to see if that is
Yes.
overrunning, or is it overrunning?
Well, that's why all the I&I work was done in that area 2 years ago, because the pump runtime was higher
Right,
for North Sturbridge Road at that time.
right.
So they used that pump runtime to determine there must be some I&I issues. They cleaned the pipes, they did all the camera work, they did all the smoke testing, and really didn't find much. Mostly because this has probably been ongoing for quite a while now.
I know we did do a repair over there. It might have been 3 or 4 years ago, because we did
yeah, the
find
pumps
it.
I think
look
it was
new.
longer than
The
that.
pumps didn't look that old down
I
there.
think the same thing happened
On pump one.
6 or 7 years ago. I'm
That's
not
what-
sure if it was pump 1 or 2.
Well, I think from what Zach said this afternoon, he found records where a similar thing happened to pump 1 and it was repaired 4, 5, 6 years ago. And this is pump 2, so it's probably been like this for a while. From what I've been told, not only do you see it like a clean cut on the top of the pipe where it came disconnected from the coupling, but it's also loose down at the bottom where it's supposed to be flanged to the slide rail. So that whole pipe is,
I think the whole problem was the pipe wasn't lagged correctly into the wet well, and therefore it was allowing that friction, and that was the problem. And I think on the other pump, we went in there and lagged that right to the wall and prevented any movement.
makes sense. I mean, that's certainly what we're seeing. We pumped the thing all the way down, so today.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it looks like we caused a little bit of a problem with one of the floats, but the floats are old too, so we need to spend a little time on that station.
Is the station being affected by groundwater?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, because it's definitely got to be in the water table where it is.
Well, it's in the water table, but I don't think there's a groundwater issue.
Okay.
I think the only way there
In
would
the
be a
pump.
groundwater issue is if where those discharge pipes are
Coming through the wall.
Right,
through the
yeah,
wall.
yeah.
And if they're not sealed good, and we can, if we're doing.
Yeah, we didn't
if we're
observe any
doing
of that
confined
today.
space entry, yeah, I mean, if we don't, you can take a look at that.
Yeah.
Because the pictures show the holes are kind of blown out a little bit where the pipes go through, but as long as they're sealed on the outside, there shouldn't be an issue.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely, we'll take a look at that. We're gonna have to put a couple guys in there, to actually, effect the repair, so, wouldn't hurt to spend a little time.
And the only way this was found is Zach was there at the pump station doing a routine inspection, and he just heard that pump running, and he said it sounded different, so he happened to look down there and just see that nothing was getting discharged as that pump was running, so. So far, for the week and a half or 2 weeks he's been here, he's been doing a pretty good job
Good
of
for him,
trying to
yeah.
get quite a bit of stuff
Yeah,
done.
Yeah, he's gonna work out well. He's got the right kind of enthusiasm, which is good.
Okay, anybody got anything else for John?
I'm all set.
You don't have anything else for us, John, so,
No, like I said, Zach was really looking forward to tonight,
If
but
not-
I'm sure he'll be looking forward to meeting you all again on the next meeting.
So, John, he's at the pump station now.
He is.
So if we're going by with a coffee, just drop one off.
Yeah, and it's cold out there. I was just out there. I was with him, but we drew straws and I won. Actually, I pulled rank. It really wasn't a straw.
There you go.
So,
You gave him the straw.
Yeah, yeah,
okay, well, good night, everyone.
Thank you very
good
much.
night, John.
thank you.
Next on our agenda, we have 66 Glen Echo Shore Drive.
Mr. Chair, Mrs. Haru is not feeling well today, so she asked if we could continue this to our next meeting. She'd like to come
Okay.
before you then. So we'll put her on the agenda for our March 11th meeting.
Next week, and then next up is Beta.
Yes, I believe Mr. Newton
Steve
and
Beta,
Mr. Mackey
yeah,
are here.
they're both here.
1 minute late?
Depends which clock you look at.
Depends, that's right, okay. Evening, fellas. How are you?
Good evening.
So, Mr. Chair, I asked Mr. Mackey and Mr. Newton to come before us tonight. After looking at the Phillips property and the Burns property, which, the Phillips property we have under agreement, the Burns property, we're about 90% of the way there. Hopefully, I'll have an agreement for you to sign and execute at your next meeting. Because the Burns property, the additional 8 acres opens us up to some more area and much better access. I talked to Peter to see if there was maybe a better way for us to spend that $113,000 that we approved for the previous proposal, instead of just drilling 2 wells. And Peter's here to talk to you about that and let you know what he came up with and associated costs with doing something a little bit different, but that can still get us kind of the same amount of data to at least give you enough information to decide whether or not to purchase both properties. So,
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, so when Peter and I had the conversation about the potential for the additional parcel, which would be great if for no other reason it provides access, but that, there might be some other questions. Would that parcel, for example, maybe have any potential as a water supply source? So the approach that we had been taking, going with the larger diameter wells and that particular drilling method, which is very expensive. I think we've talked about it, but mainly because there's only one of those rigs in the vicinity, and it's booked, and it's, they're expensive, and nobody really wants to invest in buying another one, so we're sort of caught.
And that's because of the depth.
Because of the depth and because of the diameter that we wanted to put in a 6-inch well, so that we can get a decent-sized pump in it. So there are other methods that, if we want to just evaluate geology, and we can get some decent information just evaluating the geology. So one of the reasons we wanted to put those other 2 wells in, the one that would be north and one south, would be to see if that gravel material extends beyond that one local area there where we found it. We can identify that without necessarily pumping. So we can at least see if that material exists. If we have good materials, good gravel, sands and gravels that are conducive to potential future water supply. So, I mean, there's lots of methods that can do that. The challenge is we wouldn't be able to put a pump in them because, you know, with the depth of the water out there being so great, we can't, you know, without being able to stick a pump in it, we can't figure out what the water, you know, how much water it can yield. We can do some other testing, slug testing, you know, where we pull out a little bit of water, we watch how the aquifer responds, but, you know, always caution on those, I only give us a, you know, very close to the well, assessment. So, make a long story short, what we're proposing now is to go out with a geoprobe rig, so these will be, you know, 1-inch diameter, not 6-inch diameter, pound down to 140 feet. We can still core and get that material in a core barrel, but and see what we got. So we're looking at 8 days. I've budgeted for 8 days worth of geoprobe work, and I'm guessing my estimate here is depending on how the, you know, how efficient the rig is, how early we can get out there, that we might be able to get, say, 3 wells every 2 days, 3 borings every 2 days. So we could get, you know, we could get as many as a dozen borings out there. And not just in the location that we drilled before, but also go out onto the other parcel and poke around a few boring locations out there and see if we find any materials that look like they might be geologically productive and wet.
So the additional parcel gives us flexibility because of the first parcel we were looking at, we identified one area that was high enough in elevation to get us out of the flood inundation zone.
Right.
As we look at purchasing the second parcel, it gives us not only more elevation to keep us out of that flood inundation zone, but it also gives us, because we're doing smaller wells, more area for protective radius. So rather than doing a one high yield production well that needs a 400-foot protective radius, if we do smaller gallon per day wells, that protective radius goes down. So if that confining layer that we determined was near that initial well extends further inland towards that second parcel of property, rather than just ending up with 3 wells, we may be able to do 3 wells that we were talking about, but also maybe do another 2 to 3 or 4 wells as that property slopes upland away from the lake, if the material stays consistent.
Right.
And I think the new method of doing the geoprobe, while it doesn't get us further to be able to do a pump test per se, it gives us much more data of what is actually under the ground to let you know what we might be able to do in the future with future drilling.
Right. Right.
So,
So just to summarize, so we do have one boring, one well that we know pumps water, and we know what that material looks like. So we can extrapolate to a degree, if we, without pumping, we can at least say, yes, this material is consistent with what we observed in well 2, and that produced 40 gallons a minute, plus or minus. So we can extrapolate and say, this looks consistent, we can likely get a similar volume out of this, and then decide whether you want to go forward at that time or put that information on the shelf for, you know, for future decision makers or decision to be made, or whether you want to pursue or go. I mean, those 2 wells are expensive. There's no 2 ways about it, you know, and that was an expensive job to do. So, you know, you can decide what you want to do. In the meantime, if it looks productive and you want to buy that other parcel, so that you have, you know, have it protected for, you know, for 2 years or 5 years or 20 years, you'll have some information as to whether, you know, it's useful as a, you know, as part of a public water supply.
So I guess Bob provided us with amendment number 5 for your consideration. So the cost to do those 8 days of geoprobe exploration is $58,900, which is just about half of what the other work was gonna be, which with monies that's left under the grant would leave us some funds to possibly do some bedrock well exploration in other areas of town. So pending, I guess, what the commission has for questions, I think the next steps, if you want to move forward in this direction, is to approve this amendment. We'll have to set up a meeting with DEP, because this is coming out of the grant money, to get them to approve it. And then hopefully that shouldn't be a problem. Just bring them up to speed with kind of the new direction we're going with that second parcel. Get the grant money approved to do this work and get it scheduled to go.
I'll add, too, that where feasible, where it makes sense, we will be setting monitoring wells in these locations. So in the event that you do go forward with the pump test at some point in the future, these wells will have value there. So this is, you can tie it right into the DEP grant by saying, you know, we're maybe doing this a little bit backwards, but we're doing a little more geologic exploration, and our expectation is that these borings, where appropriate, will serve as monitoring points for a prolonged pump test. So it makes it a little more palatable, perhaps, to them, that you're still on the same consistent path.
If I may, what's written down here is 6 monitoring wells. Peter, I believe you had quoted, or not quoted, had mentioned, maybe in the 8 days you could do up to 10 to 12 borings.
Yeah.
So borings and monitoring wells are one and the same?
Yeah, so the boring is the active drilling, the monitoring well is if you put the plastic in it and leave a well in
And
place.
there's plastics, Schedule 40?
Yeah,
Let's
Yep.
just throw that down there.
yep.
Okay. And the average well is 140
Well,
to 160?
where we drilled before it is, honestly, Robert, I think probably as we go closer to Gale Road, they'll be a little shallower than that.
Yep, yep.
How close are we on the second parcel?
For an agreement,
Yeah,
I'm gonna say 90% there. I should have an agreement ready for you to sign next week.
right. Okay, I know that's what you said, I just didn't know if you
Oh.
had more
No,
insight.
no, I just have to, I have an agreement that has been discussed and agreed to in principle. There is just 2 things I have to tweak, and hopefully I can make those changes with Attorney Cosgrove tomorrow, send it to them, because they're in Florida, get them to sign it, and be able to present that to you for approval. It's very similar to what we have for the other parcel. It's pretty much along the same exact lines for right now. And then we can get that agreement signed, which will allow us access to do the same type of work we're doing on the first parcel.
How long did it take last time to have DEP reaffirm the grant spending?
That same day.
Oh,
I think if we-
It was just that simple.
So yes.
You told them what the changes were gonna be,
Well,
how
we
we
were
were
at
gonna
that meeting.
rework it. Yep.
So we presented it to Mariel Stone
Mhm.
at that meeting, and I think Steve McCurdy was on the conference call with
She
us.
gave us the verbal, yep.
Yes.
Looks good.
That's pretty much all we're
Oh,
gonna
okay.
get again, but as long as Steve's involved and Mariel says, yes,
Yep.
we're all in agreement, then it should be that straightforward.
Just kind of tolerate me for a second here.
No problem.
The equipment that's used to drill the borings, is it a track machine?
It is, yeah.
Okay. How
It's
is-
much smaller.
Yeah.
It may be about the size of the
Sure.
table you're on.
Yeah, like a mini excavator with some air compressors on it and stuff, and
Yeah.
on tracks, and it's got a boom, and
Yeah.
how is that different from a machine that drills for geothermal? Which on geothermal, they're not drilling through sand gravel, they're drilling through granite,
Yeah,
okay? Which in geothermal,
yep,
they'll put in 10, 20, 30 of
yep.
these. Now, so, because is the majority of this 50 some odd $1,000, this is for the drilling?
It's
majority-
a little more than half is for the drilling.
So half is for the drilling. All right, so
Yep.
we're looking at like $26,000 to $28,000 for the drilling.
Yep,
Okay, so again, I'm trying to get a handle here, because those machines that do the geothermal drilling, they're all over the place.
But
Yep.
they don't take cores.
that's a big difference. And it's the speed, because, we discussed this prior with the other, with the importance of
Right.
us getting the geologic materials and getting good cores of the
Right, but
good
if-
samples.
Right. Again, if if I, I'm just trying to visualize this in my head. So in order to do a core, what you've got to do is you've got to pot in a plastic lining pipe. So you're
Yeah.
down about 100 feet in the regular, then pull that out, put in the liner. Then
So-
then you would say is, all right, we're going to do core samples from 100 to 150. So do 8 to 10 feet, pull out your core, we'll take a look at it. All right, fine, we need to go deeper. Put in another length of plastic, make the thing deeper. Let's do the same process all over again. Is that basically it?
Yes and no, I don't, so they'll drive and for this rig, they'll drive a 5-foot long, probably a 3-inch diameter barrel. They'll drive
Sure.
it in with
Yeah.
a shoe on the end.
Yep.
And then they'll drive in, the sample bit, which is 1.5 inches in diameter, that has a plastic, bag basically in it.
Yep.
Drive that down, advance it 4 feet in front of the 3-inch casing, and then drive another section, drive that down over it, pull that sample core
Right.
out, put another one in, thread the pipe in,
Right,
put another,
just
drive it
repeat
in,
the
and then
same
drive it
thing,
around. So it's
but go
a very
deeper and deeper and
iterative
deeper.
process.
Right.
So it's time consuming.
Time consuming.
But the
Got it.
GeoProbe rig is much, this other rig is, the one that we used before was very fast.
Yeah.
I mean, we drilled 140 feet in a little over a day to drill it. And when we set the offset well, we put a well next to it, we drilled that in a few hours. Because
Yeah.
because we weren't sampling at that, because we were right next to the one that we drilled, but.
Yeah.
So, and the GeoProbe rig is a little less powerful than the one that we used before, so it's gonna be a little bit slower. We are gonna be moving around a lot more too, so there's gonna be transition
Right,
time
set up
between
and right,
sites,
and
yeah.
Tree cutting and whatever.
Yep.
How-
I mean, hopefully not a lot
how
of tree cutting, because this is a
thickly
much smaller.
Tree is this property? Similar to the other
I
one?
think it's similar
It's
to the
similar,
other one,
yeah,
yes.
but this rig is much smaller, the support equipment is much smaller, so it's not, I don't think we'll need to go anywhere near the level of access. I
But
mean,
you're
these
doing-
things are used to going in the woods.
You're doing 5-foot core samples from 10 feet down, all the way down to bedrock. You're not waiting until you get to 100 feet to start
Right.
doing your core samples.
Why? I don't understand why.
Because you don't know what you're finding. You might be, there may be a bigger pocket of gravel, why would
Right.
you just go through it? You don't know what's
It's-
there for.
No,
Robert, it's
Raw
very
material.
possible that because we know water is shallow, but that we'll just pound down to, say, 40 feet, and then we'll start taking samples from 40 on down. But we need to know what the materials are. There's a certain amount of understanding that, what we call the depositional nature of this,
Yeah.
of the geology, like how this geology got here. And by having an understanding of that, we can sort of, even think about this site, it's gonna be 30 acres. And at best, we're gonna have, maybe 11 or 12 holes in the ground. We have to extrapolate the whole geology from 11 or 12 little points. So we need to understand, by looking at the materials that we're drilling through, we need to understand how that stuff got there. And then we can say, all right, we understand how that got there, so now let's fill in the blanks between these borings that might be 200, 300 feet apart. And so, so it's very important for the type of work that we do as part of a water supply investigation, where we're looking for materials that frankly aren't always easy to find. So it's very important for us to understand what we're drilling through to get to the materials that we want to get to. So I appreciate your concern. It's slower.
That's just
It's
questions.
just more deliberate, yeah.
In your past history, when you're in the same area, have you found to where in this gravel pack area, you'll have different heights of water producing zones?
Absolutely.
You do?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it can vary, in an area like the Buffinville over there, where the surface
Yeah,
topography
yeah,
is
yeah.
very,
Yeah.
dramatic. You could go, we could find a good pocket here, we could go 20 feet away and miss it completely. It's just, what I think is going on over there is that we had a big sheet of ice that might have been a mile or, 6,000 to 7,000 feet thick, and underneath it was a melt channel. And in that melt channel, water's humming along, and, the fines and stuff get washed away, and gravel and stuff gets sitting there. We call that an esker. And, you know, that just kind of winds, and they can be 10 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet across. We don't know. We've got one boring, you know, one hole in it, so we just don't know. So it's, you know, it's very important that we understand, you know, what we're drilling through. So it just, you know, it just takes a little bit more time, and it, you know, frankly, you know, and obviously most every business time is money.
And you'd value this as a good investment?
I do. I mean, I do. You know, I think this site has potential. You're not gonna feed Cambridge or, you know, Newton with this amount of water. But, you know, if you can get a couple 100,000 gallons a day out of this site, which I think is a distinct possibility, then, you know, I think that gets Charlton a long way towards what I understand, you know, your goals are. Particularly, you know, if we can then supplement that, maybe with a bedrock well over by Route 20 or, you know, some other supplemental sources around where you know. I think this site is a good seed well site. Not perfect, but I think it, you know, I think it definitely has potential.
Especially with the additional property too, with the higher elevation and topography, it gives us the ability, if we need to do a pump station or some type of treatment facility, we can do it on our own property before it leaves the site. And then we can start talking about, again, meet with Bob and talk about how we're gonna get that water out of there. Draw that on the map, so we can provide that to the Army Corps of Engineers, so that they can kind of look at that and say yes or no, and see if we can actually get it up to our current infrastructure. Rather than drilling under the lake, I met with them last week and talked about a couple different things, so I need to talk with Bob about that, kind of put some stuff on paper, some conceptual designs of that, and give that to them and see what their thoughts are, so.
Pete, what do you mean by drilling under the lake?
Well, when we first initially looked at this property, it was always thought that we would just directional drill under Buffinville Lake,
Okay,
come
yeah.
out to AF Putnam Road, kind of like the oil, the
Yeah.
ExxonMobil pipeline does. After looking at it more, I think we can come out, because we have this property, the second parcel gives us direct access to Gale Road. We can come out to Gale Road and head north up Gale Road to where it dead ends. Directional bore under the backside of the spillway and take their road out to Oxford Road. And that way there, it gets us coming out to Oxford Road more directly. And,
That's more direct than cutting across,
I
taking a
think it's-
shortcut across the lake and getting on to
I think it's more.
AF Putnam?
I think it'll be a lot less expensive to directional drill under that short channel versus the entire lake, because we still don't have a piece of property on the other side of the lake to come out to. And to directional drill from the higher elevation that we're at, to go down to lake level, to drill that hole to get the directional drill started is gonna have its own challenges.
Isn't there a public street just across the waterway there?
Dennis Wilbur Drive.
There's a cul-de-sac there, but there's private property between.
You got one, between the lake and the subdivision, there's,
In talking with Bob and Peter and that directional drilling, I think it would be more cost effective to do it the second way than
okay, well,
that
again,
we're
something to
thinking,
look
so.
at when we get there.
The other issue to keep in mind, when you directional drill, you have to have a pretty decent understanding of what you're directional drilling under, because you can't be too shallow, because you'll actually, it's a blowout. The material that you're using to essentially lubricate the head can actually blow out, and then you lose control of the head. It literally just comes right up under the lake, and then you've got a big problem on your hands. So I guess what I'm getting at is you actually would have to do a lot of geo-type investigation no matter what. So if you either gotta do bathymetry type samples going across the lake. I mean, it sounds easier than it really is, because if you've got 25 feet of peat sitting underneath that lake, and you're trying to drill and you're in that peat layer, you're not gonna have any stability with that drilling head. It's just gonna come out. So it sounds simple, and if you've got the right geology there, it is simple, but you actually have to do a lot of testing to make sure that's the case.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there are just no simple answers on this project.
We all good?
So, Peter, what are we looking for here?
I guess I would ask if there's no questions and you think this is a good direction to go, that you approve amendment number 5, and I'll reach out to the DEP tomorrow and try and set up a follow-up meeting with them to present this to them. Get them kind of up to speed in why we changed direction and what's going on, and make sure they don't see any big concerns, and that they'll still allow us to use the grant money to do this scope of work.
I'll make a motion to accept amendment number 5 as printed, to increase the fee by $58,900.
I would, if you would accept the addition to that is subject to obtaining funds at town meeting to purchase this property? Or at least, excuse me, obtaining the authority to purchase the property at town meeting. Because this is going on the property we're talking about purchasing, correct?
It's going on both parcels, yes.
But it's going on at least the newer parcel.
I think this work is gonna be done on both parcels.
Okay. But we don't, we only have authority to be on one parcel right now.
You will have, once you sign the agreement, you'll have authorization to be on both
All right,
parcels.
so we'll have authorization for both, and then we can, and then after we do this, receive the information, digest it, we can then make a decision on whether or not we're gonna go forward
Yes.
with the purchasing of property A and B,
Yes.
or just A, or just B.
Yes.
Got it, okay.
And my understanding is from town council is you already have authorization from the previous town meeting to purchase property.
Okay, I withdraw that offering.
Okay,
So
we got a
some more-
motion, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Any other discussion? None, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
Excellent.
Good, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you,
wanna
gentlemen.
just, will reach out to me, I'll call DEP tomorrow, and reach out to you to try and see when they're available, so we can set
Yeah.
up that meeting, and then if you want to try and start scheduling that deal pro.
He said he's available either March 11th or the 18th.
Okay, so we should have an agreement signed on March 11th.
Okay,
Is
so
our
we'll
next
plan
meeting.
the 18th,
Okay, that'd be great. That
unless
gets-
we
Yeah,
get some pushback from the state.
correct, yes, exactly.
Excellent.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
folks.
you.
Nice to see you
Nice
again.
to see you guys.
And we're going back to 44 Old Worcester Road,
Yes,
Valley Green Grove.
yes. So, Mr. Chair, as you're aware, Valley Green Grow is proposing their marijuana cultivation facility on 44 Old Worcester Road. We received some correspondence regarding that project, and the planning board is having their next public hearing, I believe on March 6th. So I just wanted to make sure that we can discuss that here, and that any comments that you might want to put forward as a board can be put forward as correspondence from the entire board to be presented at that meeting, so they have that information directly from you. I do plan on attending that meeting, to provide comments based on our discussion tonight. And also, I guess anyone here is welcome. I would just ask if you let me know if you plan on attending, so if more than two of you are there, I can post. So the first correspondence we got was from Mr. Kochland regarding 44 Worcester Road. If you don't mind it, I'll just go through the email, and then whatever we have for follow-up questions, we'll just kind of go from there.
Sure.
So Ed raised, everyone has a copy of the email in front of you that was sent with the packet. I guess back, again, according to what happened, back in 2005, this parcel was assessed with a 2 EDU betterment based on the 2 structures being located on that parcel, so they received a betterment of $16,400. You'll see that Mr. Cochin also attached minutes from a meeting from a previous Water Sewer Commission from December 6, 2004, where that betterment was rescinded. So that $16,400 betterment received an abatement, and there was no charge for that. My understanding with how the betterment process worked is that that betterment was rescinded because of the length that those properties were off the roadway was more costly for them to connect than the betterment that was assessed, which is why that betterment may have been rescinded at that time. in Mr. Cotchlin's email, he raises concerns of 61A as being used as a property tax reduction and also having a land use restriction for open space conservation. So there's some concerns here. I don't know if you want to, I guess, go through the email on your own, or just let Mr. Cotchlin go through it and try and answer his concerns as he brings them up.
Sure, I mean, Ed, through the chairman, Ed asked to bring the letter forward and ask some questions, so it's time in the sun.
So, actually, I'm a little bit on the learning curve here with Chapter 61A and what's going on this project. And at one of the planning board hearings, I brought this topic up and brought it up to the planning board and said, I'm not sure how a property that received an abatement for a betterment can now be applying for a permit or an approval for a subdivision permit based on the fact that it needs to use that exact betterment that it was abated for, if that makes sense. And the answer that I got from the planning board is that I need to speak with the Water Sewer Commission, because they are the organization or the commission that granted that abatement in the first place. So I guess, I mean, I have been doing some homework on this, obviously. And, you know, it's my understanding that it's not really a sewer betterment, but it's a property betterment. So typically, you know, I mean, obviously, the sewer went by this property, and the question really is was the property bettered by that? And I think the simple answer to that is yes, because right now you have a situation where the property can be developed at quite a bit more money than it would be able to be developed if it didn't have that betterment. So I understand, you know, from reading the minutes from back in 2005, and I understand it, that basically the thought was is that there was a deed restriction on the property based on the 61A that said that they couldn't develop this property, and then...
Real quick, 61A, I don't believe, puts a deed restriction on the property for development.
Okay, so the minutes indicate that there was deed restrictions on the property, and that's why it couldn't be, you know, access the sewer, use the sewer.
And again, unfortunately, our minute, or the previous board's minutes can reflect a deed restriction. And I don't believe 61A puts a deed restriction on the property.
Okay.
So there may be some confusion in the motion that was made by the Water Sewer Board referencing that, but I don't believe that just because it was mentioned in this motion, there's an actual deed restriction on that property. So there might be some confusion there based on a misstatement.
I would say that potentially there's an error in what was stated for the minutes
Okay.
with the restriction. I don't know the Charlton Orchard situation and know if there is a restriction on the property for agricultural use. But 61A itself would not just limit that.
I see. So...
To my knowledge.
Right, so, and again, I mean, I'm no expert at 61A. So I guess my question here is that you have a situation here where there is a subdivision being proposed on a parcel of land that received an abatement based on the fact that they couldn't use the sewer, okay? That betterment was not going to, you know, affect that property value in that actual property. So if you look at the situation right now, there's basically this subdivision, which is two lots, Lot A and Lot B. Lot A is that existing parcel of land that received the abatement. So how is it now that it's coming in as a subdivision, can that exact property that received the abatement all of a sudden kind of undo the abatement? And if it's a case where they have to go and rectify that matter and pay back taxes, you know, to make them whole in that situation.
Mr. Chair, as I see this project moving forward, there's been no betterment paid on the property. So much like any other parcel that didn't receive a betterment when the sewer line was run, they would be assessed a privilege fee based on the same process that the betterments were assessed. Much like you've done on any other new connection that's taken place, whether it be treehouse or whether it be any other subdivided lot that was created after the initial betterments were assessed. So because there's no betterment here, they would start from zero. So if they want to come and connect one house lot, or two house lots, or three house lots, or if their project gets approved and they want to come and ask for 20,000 gallons per day, you're going to assess them based on that privilege fee, based on what they're requesting for usage, as you do to anybody else who hadn't received the betterment. So until we get that request for them to come and actually make a connection, I don't think you have discussed it or considered it yet, because it hasn't been presented to you for a actual sewer connection. They may have mentioned it at planning board, but they have not been in front of you requesting anything for that new subdivision roadway. And because they haven't been in front of you, there's no guarantee that they will, I guess, get sewer until you approve that. So they could always do a septic system as well. They could also do private septic because they have to meet current zoning requirements.
So in order for them to get an approval from the planning board and the health department, they have to have sewer access. So right now, you're saying they have to come before this board and talk about it with you guys in order to get that access. So right now, they don't have access to that sewer.
Well, for those individual lots, I believe they can also do private septic systems if they're passed.
Well, if that's the case, then they have to provide that information to the health board before they get their approval. And that's my point here, is it's sort of a little mixed up because of the circumstances. So, I mean, my understanding is that typically, if you have a parcel of land where the sewer goes by and you have a home on it, you would have been charged in the town of Charlton a one-unit betterment charge for that house.
Right.
And then if you,
Regardless of the size of the
right, correct. And then if you decided to cut a lot off of that parcel and build another house, that would be, a betterment would be applied to that.
A privilege fee would be assessed to that new lot that was created.
That's correct. So what's strange here is that you don't have that same situation because the land that you're talking about had already been, abated. You know what I mean? So basically, this parcel was determined that it was not a betterment, right? There was no betterment here, and that's why it was abated. And now all of a sudden, they're kind of coming back and using that betterment. So I think that nowhere in Chapter 80, if you read through Chapter 80, Mass General Laws, does it sort of spell out a scenario like this where you're going back and providing sewer to a lot that was abated from the sewer. And that's the part that's, I'm questioning here. And again, I'm not an expert. I could be way out of bounds. It seems to me there's something not right here. And I would ask that the commission, do some homework on that and find out more about that.
If I may, a couple things, is what the former Water and Sewer Commission did, and based on the minutes, they chose to grant the abatement based on the information that applied at the time, which was, if it was, and as I read this, is that if you're over X amount of feet from the road, and that it makes it cumbersome to get to the sewer, and I believe it was over 400 feet, that the applicant or the property owner said, look, we're not gonna use sewer at this time, and we don't wanna hook up, and because it's so far away, it's gonna cost more to hook up than it is as far as the value. We've got 100 acres here, and we can find somewhere to where we can replace our septic system if we need to. And at that time, the board made the decision that that's correct. Now, if I see this, is this correct, Peter? At one time, they had two betterments for that property, and what they did was they requested a abatement for both betterments.
Yes.
Okay, so the betterments was for the existing buildings.
I believe there was two existing structures, two houses on the
Right,
property,
right,
both
and-
up at the end of the roadway.
Right, so they would have got charged for that.
Yes.
Now, this has nothing to do with, wasn't there another situation to where there was a betterment and then there was a moratorium at the time, and they actually traded with another property owner who wanted to bet them, who wanted to connect, and they couldn't? Or am I totally off base?
Not, that-
You don't-
Could have been, I don't remember.
Okay, all right. So, they had the right to come in and request it, and they would get given it. So this is now, I call it Etch-a-Sketch. So now it's vacant land, but there's sewer in the street. So now what has happened after 12, 14 years, a new owner, a new potential owner is coming along, and they choose that they prefer to connect to the sewer. We can't, I don't see how we can deny it if in fact the sewer is available. And so I know that if that came in front of this board and I was gonna vote, I'd say is, fine, there's no reason why you can't have sewer, because it's available in the street, and you've gotta go and get it. Now, so that's one thing. As far as the subdivision goes, I don't, and Rush, you know this, with subdivision, you have to issue to the planning board as far as what you're gonna do, as far, the property has to pass perk, because it'd be insane for the planning board to approve property that couldn't pass perk. But because sewer is available, maybe we should be telling the planning board is that these lots, because of the frontage, and it's so close to the sewer that's in the street, they need to expand the sewer into their subdivision.
I believe the way it reads is regardless of if you're gonna do sewer or not.
I believe what the state statute says is that if you have property that abuts a street with sewer, you have to connect the sewer. And also the other,
But what I'm saying is it still has to be parked.
so what?
Still has, in the subdivision control law, I think you still have to park it.
You still have to perk it even though sewer's available?
I believe
And
so.
even though you've already got permission to connect to the sewer?
Doesn't make any sense.
No, that doesn't make sense, if in fact sewer's available. That's like being in the city of Worcester, and you got a ledge pile, and you're doing 10,000 square foot lots, and they do that all the time. But I would say is that we do need to contact the planning board to make sure that if this subdivision, the subdivision should have some, or should have the infrastructure to extend the sewer from the street into these lots, because how big's the subdivision? What's it, 100 feet, 200
Well,
feet?
yes, the road is, but it's basically just a small bulb or
Yeah, it's
cul-de-sac
like
head.
a light bulb, a small
Yeah,
light
right,
bulb.
Right, so basically, there's two lots, Lot A, which is the main parcel,
Right,
and then they have Lot B. And it's very odd, because they have put sort of what I would call a spite strip in on Lot B, a 5-foot strip between the frontage on Old Worcester Road.
Okay.
The entire length of the frontage, so the majority of Lot B has no frontage on Worcester Road. And I'm not really sure, that technique was used in subdivisions as a spite strip, so that when they left open space, they would put this 5-foot strip.
right.
Just in case the open space became available through tax title or something and somebody bought it, they wouldn't be able to develop it because they wouldn't have frontage.
Right,
On street. So for some strange reason, this subdivision, and I want to ask at the next planning board meeting why that was done. I don't know if it's for tax reasons, because they're not on, and two intersecting roads, like a corner lot, which the taxes would be higher. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Or if the betterment was based on frontage.
Yes.
Both for, or the privilege fee.
Right.
Both for water and sewer.
Right.
Instead of having 1,900 feet of frontage, whatever it is, they'd only have, what's that area? Is that R40 there? Or R60?
It's A60.
A60, okay, so it's 175 feet.
Well, the town uses a unit fee, so it wouldn't really matter.
No, correct, but if they have a change.
Right.
So I think that the commission should be writing a letter to the planning board informing them that it's our recommendation that sewer be extended to both of these lots.
Well, don't you think prior to, I'd have to assume the first step would be, what are they gonna be asking for? What are they gonna be asking to put into the sewer system?
First of all,
Gallons per
we don't
day?
know, but what we do know is this, in fact, it should be both sewer and water, because we want as many people as possible to connect to water. The problem here is this subdivision which hasn't been approved yet. And that's why if, we need to get this in before the approval, because the planning board can put this as part of the requirements of approval. Is they have, I believe in their application, this is listed as a non-residential subdivision. Again, from everything that I've heard, and in fact, I had a discussion with a planning board member, not my son, but a planning board member other than my son, that it is stated it's non-residential, thus making it commercial and industrial, which is a whole other set of criteria. And personally, I don't know how you can access a commercial industrial subdivision from a residential road, which I think that, the planning board's got to figure that out. That's not our job. But,
So if I may, I believe you're 100% correct. They did designate it as non-residential, and it was brought up that there's other residential, everything else, and it was put into the everything else category for stormwater, and that was one of the questions that we're seeking an answer to here, is what exactly are you building? And again, how is that going to affect the town water and sewer? The current plan calls for two-inch water services, one to each lot, as well as 2 6-inch sewer connections. And then it also has a 6-inch water connection. And earlier in this hearing, I brought those points up, that it's important for the commission to maybe point out to the planning board, if they are going to do any, if it does get approved, that there should be some stipulation that they have to get those utilities off the road before you guys pave it. Because just because they get an approval doesn't mean they're going to start next week, you know what I mean? They might put it off for a couple of years.
But if it's in the shoulder that abuts their property, when they build a subdivision, they can always connect to it. So that's why the
Right,
laterals,
they have to do the
the
steps.
laterals would have
Right,
to be
right,
installed.
correct. And
But-
that would be a good
But they
comment for you guys
haven't,
to make.
we haven't seen any of these applications for laterals, or anything like that? Nothing, nothing. So
And
that's what's,
And that's, I guess that's my question. I mean, how do you know what you're allowing to tie in when all of a sudden maybe they come along and they say, oh yeah, we're gonna be dumping 18,000 gallons a day into the system, and we say, well, that's not allowed because
Right,
we
well,
have
first
to
of all-
approve anything over 10,000 gallons
Exactly.
per day.
Yeah.
But they're gonna say, well, you said we could.
So VGG's been in front of you to talk about the development of the 100-acre parcel. Very preliminary.
yep.
They haven't given you any, they haven't given you any preliminary numbers or anything like that. And they have not been in front of you to talk about this subdivision at all.
correct. So-
The office gets correspondence from the planning board, usually on their submittals. I don't recall seeing a plan that showed the water and sewer connections.
Oh, no, they have,
to the- yeah,
no,
I
no,
might have- I
they,
might have
well,
missed
that's the
that.
curious part, because the
That
bylaws.
must have been a revision very recently.
Well, the bylaws call for every lot in a subdivision to have a water and sewer connection. And basically, Lot A, the part of Lot A that actually has frontage on Old Worcester Road has a water and sewer line running to it, but it's actually an underground detention system, so I don't know why you would do that. And then the other parcel, which has this spite strip, has, through the public right-of-way, there are 2 connections. And then there's this other sort of hidden, well, I shouldn't say hidden, but it's tough to see, this other 6-inch connection. And that's one of the reasons for coming down here to do, is to get this, bring this to your attention, to make sure that, we're all working in the, on the same page here in town. The last thing we want to do is have a subdivision that gets approved, and then
So-
it doesn't work well with all the other things going on.
So planning board usually shares revisions of those plans, and I must have, whether I missed it or didn't see those laterals being shown, or maybe that communication
But we've
didn't
had,
get sent. But they haven't been in front of you to make any type, they haven't discussed, made any calls to the office asking for water and sewer service.
but it's not our job to go to the developer and say, hey, what do you need here?
Right.
I mean,
No, I
we've had
understand.
plenty of other people come
Yes,
before us and say, I'm looking at putting in this subdivision, I'm gonna need 18 connections. And we've left room in the system for that to happen. We knew there were residential connections, they're 2 bedrooms apiece and blah, 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 and they gave us a whole list of information, right?
yes.
And that's what you'd expect from any applicant who's moving a project forward, who's looking to get sewer. Short of that,
so there's a little bit of a cloud over this, or it's a mystery, because the applicant is claiming that they're just going for the approval of the subdivision, so for a zoning freeze purposes, and they're never gonna build the project. But if you were never gonna build the project, then I don't understand why it's so, has all these excessive features, and it's just, it doesn't seem to, the two things aren't, I mean, if it's just gonna be for zoning purposes, why wouldn't they just make it a residential subdivision? Why are they making it a non-residential and kind of adding to the mystery?
I'm right there with you. I'd love to know the answers to a lot of the questions, but bottom line.
I would think the last thing that we want to have happen is not give the planning board what we're thinking about, and then the planning board goes through and they approve the subdivision, and then we have someone come in front of us and says, well, I got approved the subdivision, and now you have to do this. Well, when we didn't have any input, you know, from day one.
Why don't we just ask the planning board to make it subject to any approval of a request for sewer and water from the applicant at our discretion, just like any other.
Well, I would think that the language would be any and all proposed lots need to be connected to water and sewer. Public water and sewer.
that.
Why can't we do it? First of all, is I know that there is right in Title, in Title V, in Title V, it says, if sewer is available, you shall connect. Not you may connect, you shall connect.
If the Board of Health mandates it.
I think we'll look at that again.
I will.
Okay.
If the Board of Health mandates it, because that's in our bylaws as well.
And-
That
and-
section is in our bylaws.
And there was a bylaw passed on town floor that any property along the new Old Worcester Road, Morton Station, Mugget Hill Road, on new construction, has to connect to public water.
Well, let me simplify it.
Okay, so they have to connect to public water if any new.
All right,
But let's simplify this discussion. It's on their plans.
Correct. Currently is.
So
Okay.
they're going to be asking for
Yeah.
it.
Does anybody have a copy of that subdivision plan?
No.
I left it on the counter, I was in the dark, sorry.
Sounds like Rob Lemansky. I left it on the counter. I was in a rush to get here because I was late.
I think
but,
the easiest thing to do for correspondence with the planning board is to let them know that we have not approved any water or sewer connection to our infrastructure, existing or planned at this time.
Nor has there been any request.
Correct.
Yeah. And
And I think that pretty much spells it out to them and let them know that we are not committed to allowing them or being forced to connect or any of that because we don't know what's being proposed and there's a lot of unanswered questions. And I think that would be the easiest way to be able to present that to them where it kind of covers everything.
Peter, I'm reading here that on March 19, 2018, who's the Green Gold Group? The Green
I
Gold?
think you're jumping ahead.
No, oh, so it's not not related to VVG? Sorry, apologize.
Separate
Okay,
line item.
okay.
Well, I guess I would say thank you very much for your time on these matters, and I hope that I helped out with the water main and trying to at least get the dialogue going here for this project, as well as other projects that come along, because I don't know if there's any other subdivisions that are along the water route, but you guys, it might be a good idea to,
Well, I think
Reach
as everyone following this situation knows that this isn't typical.
Right.
And like you say, in the past, we've had many people come before this board.
yeah, it would only make
Before
sense.
I was on it, but just through my limited experience, I know of a couple that have come through and
Yeah.
asked and petitioned. And so,
And as far as the betterment situation is concerned, again, it's a little bit, in my mind, it's still a little cloudy because of the 61A and whether the property received this betterment abatement, even though it's obviously been bettered. I'm not sure if you guys in the future would look at a property just because they can't, for the existing home, can't tie in to the sewer. It doesn't mean that the property wasn't bettered, because it means that the property can cut a lot off
But they have
that can
done
use
that.
sewer.
Well, there was a water property that was assigned to betterment that was abated because the cost to connect to the water line exceeded the benefit of the betterment.
Yeah, we did that on Route
So-
20.
So that is something that has been done subsequently since then, based on that same grounds. That doesn't mean, as Mr. Lemansky said, that it precludes them from connecting in the future. It just means that when they come forward in the future, they don't get that privilege of that betterment being assessed to what's gonna be charged for them to connect. They have to pay from zero, just like it's a new lot being created.
I see.
I think is pretty much how.
Again, it's multiple bites of the apple. And to be fair is when it came, again, I wasn't back there in that time. As, I think the commission did what they thought was fair as far as dealing with these people. And for the longest time, I always thought that the orchard was under chapter 272, similar to quite a few parcels in town, which the development rights were sold off. And that's when you would have the title or the deed restricted, because once you do that, you sell the rights off to the state and you get paid, then, it's forever locked in unless you go to the State House and get an actual change, and they usually don't do that. No, so again, I believe that was not the the actual,
Fay Mountain Farm is an
Legend.
example of that, where the development rights were sold to the state. That is not 61A. That's
Right.
something with a previous
Solar
owner.
parts of Dresser Hill.
Parts of Dresser Hill, where Bigelow Nurseries is. The development rights were sold to the state. There's your deed restriction. You have to use it for active farming only as approved by the state. I don't believe, just because this parcel might be in 61A is not the same. It's a completely different
No, I
statute.
understand that, and each
61A, I
one
don't
carries a
believe,
different.
has any type of deed restriction.
and I think the terminology they use is a preservation restriction. Preservation restriction on the property when you sold the rights to the state. State comes in, hands you a check, and then you continue on your property.
So
But
that's another question for, I think, the tax assessor that I posed to her was, under 61A, the property owner's not allowed to sell the property to somebody with conditions. And that's part of section 14, that's a whole bunch of things. So there is a lot more to, 61A is actually a very interesting chapter. However, I don't want to take any more of your
Well, no,
time. I
right.
appreciate you guys giving me a chance to speak about it.
no problem.
Mr. Chairman, Jerry Russell from Old Worcester. I'm here with Mr. Kochling. I just had a quick comment, quick question, if I may.
Sit down. Sure. Have a seat, Jerry. So you're trying to squeeze under the umbrella here.
Correct.
Good.
It's my understanding the ExxonMobil water line is slated to be installed in L. Turner Road. Oh, you did? Okay.
And our superintendent is going to be examining through the town clerk whether or not that road is a public road or not, and he's going to, if there's documentation, that'll be verified. It's a public road.
Sure, yeah, we have, some research has been done, and we have a list from 1937 from the town clerk's office, where it's on a list of accepted and town roads from 1937, so
You might want to share that with Peter, so that it might help him out at the town clerk's office.
we'll do. And just
So-
finally, the last question is, ExxonMobil had determined that L. Turner Road was a public road?
I don't think there was that much forethought put into it, because I think when that water connection was designed, it was well before BGG was even thought of. So when you look at when this was designed, my guess is they looked at that map that showed L. Turner Road, they thought it was a public road, there's a 100-acre parcel, put a 4-inch lateral up a certain portion of that road so that it's there for future use in case something happens there. That, I don't think there was any more thought to it than that. There was, so now we're here, that 4-inch lateral probably was 250 feet up that road or driveway, whatever it may be, for no other reason than the engineer in an office looked at it and said, maybe we should put this 4-inch line there, so it's adequate for whatever might happen for some type of possible development in the future.
There was considerable expense to put that in. I don't think I don't know anybody who wants to spend money if they don't have to. And I think, I think that was it, and the same thing, what's the other, isn't Hammer Rock Road that's off of off of either Oxford Road or Mugget Hill is a town road, and they're actually extending it up that road? So I think it follows the same premise as what they did with El Turner Road. A, it's public, we have to do it.
So, okay, and again, El Turner Road may have been shown on that tax clerks, or the town clerks in 1937 on their road list, but there could have been a subsequent meeting that discontinued it.
Could have been.
So
Yeah,
without
well, we weren't able to
researching-
find that information, but we did have the 1937
So-
list, and then subsequent Chapter 80 list as well, so.
Okay. So is it on the Chapter 90 list now?
I'll give you what I have.
Thank you.
Okay.
And again,
Thanks for sharing
I'm not
that,
sure
Jerry.
how that really plays into what we have going on.
Well-
Whether it's a public roadway or not, because ExxonMobil is going to pay to install water lines on private property for a lot of the abutters that are there,
Connections,
connections.
right. Well, this
Or-
is beyond the connection,
Okay,
because of its size, Peter.
okay.
That's what, because if in fact, from what I understand, is that if we ever saw an application from these people, I believe the application is for an 8-inch line, not for a 4-inch line, because
We've had discussion about that, and whether they were gonna
Okay.
do an 8-inch water connection from Route 20 or from Old Worcester Road, and when that timing came into play on that. And they never came back with any formal request as type of what they're gonna
Okay.
request for flow, for water, or for sewer. So
Yeah.
we're in limbo here as it comes to any part of this. So if VGG moves forward, that 4-inch line is very inadequate for anything they're gonna do. And that 4-inch line is a little bit oversized for what's currently existing, so.
correct.
I think if the board wants to direct ExxonMobil to do anything different with that 4-inch connection at this time, we can do that. That can be a field change, or we can send them a formal
Run
request
it
to.
down to the police station.
What?
We'll run it down to the police station.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
I guess the big question that I had was, is it a driveway or is it a public road? And-
Well, I think
Peter's
that,
gonna
and
answer.
that's
That's
The
what we're
town
gonna
clerk, the
Let
town
Peter
clerk
start
has that
there.
answer.
and check
Thank
the
you.
boxes and.
Good, have a good
So
day, Jerry.
just to follow up real quick, as far as correspondence to the planning board goes. Again, as I listened, I think we need, if you wanna, if you want me to draft a letter, I think it would be as simple to say, at this time, the Charlton Water Sewer Commission has not received any request for water or sewer connection to the proposed subdivision plan, and specifically reference a subdivision plan. Because we
Right.
have had discussion about the site plan. We haven't had any formal request, but there's been preliminary discussion about possibilities. So I think as far, if they're looking for the site plan only, we reference the site plan only, and let them know that we've had 0 requests for water and sewer connection to that proposed subdivision plan.
And would it be the commission's request that if in fact the subdivision is gonna go through, that it is serviced by public water and public sewer? Are we gonna make that suggestion?
Well, I don't know if you legally can, I certainly wouldn't want to, I mean, anything that we can legally do naturally, but I don't know if you can. But
Well, I
given
can-
that it's on their plans,
Your water,
they're going to be requesting it.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are saying, we
Yeah,
want public
okay,
water
so
and
based
sewer.
upon their plans, we're reminding the planning board is that the extension of water and sewer to the subdivision, you know,
I
is
think the
required.
planning board could very well say, until you go to water and sewer, how can we approve your plans? Because we don't know,
Okay.
we don't know as a planning board, we don't know if the water and sewer commission is going to give you water and sewer. Right? And
Yeah.
you're saying that that's how you're going to, you're gonna use
I don't
water
think we
and
can
sewer.
withhold it, but we can
not
withhold it
saying
if in fact the request is so abundant that it's not available. And that's why, the tricky thing here is, it's stated it's a non-residential subdivision.
I'm not saying that we would withhold it, we would treat that applicant any different than any other applicant. All I'm saying is that it's not really our issue to make, it's the planning
Okay,
board's
no,
issue
no, I
to
don't
make.
disagree.
And in the letter, Peter's gonna point out that we have not been approached as of yet about that. So they can turn around and say, you didn't get approval from those guys yet. Isn't that step one?
You would think so. You would think so.
That's what other applicants have done.
Right. Right.
It's not like we're not here twice a month.
So what Mr. Jennings is saying is that in effect, they don't have approval from you to tie into the water and sewer, and they should get that first before they get an approval from the planning board.
Well, I'm saying that other applicants have done that in the past.
Yep.
What they choose to do and what the planning board chooses to do.
We don't have an outlined process to where it says, you must do this, you must do this, and you must do this, and this is the order. So that's the only scary thing, but we do have to remind people, especially the planning board, is we haven't seen nor heard of them. And what we understand is on the plan, they're talking about these, again, that's a commercial connection when they talk about a 2-inch water line, because that's a requirement of Southbridge, is it's gotta be 2-inch. So they're already identifying those lots as being commercial industrial.
Well, aren't they doing that by saying it's non-residential?
Exactly.
subdivision?
But they're magnifying it, or they're doubling down on it.
But it's just speculation on our.
Yeah,
at this
exactly,
point in time,
exactly.
Because we don't have any information, so.
Well, I mean, that comes back to like the 6-inch line that they're showing on their plan. I mean, that obviously that was for fire protection, I'm guessing. But I'm not sure if the town water system that's going in there has that capabilities, and that's why they should be coming to you guys first. I'll make that point at the planning board. Perfect, thank you.
Next.
There was, under that, there was one other letter from, correspondence from Patricia Ridlack that she sent it on her own letterhead, talking about the maps of the water lines on Old Worcester Road and talking, much like Mr. Costin brought up, that El Turner Road may not be a public road at this time, so.
So they're unsure themselves,
That, yeah, I suppose.
okay?
I guess at this time, I'll just let ExxonMobil know that we're unsure of what we're gonna do with that 4-inch line, not that they're gonna be there anytime soon, but
Yep.
just so they have that on their, I'll just send them an email over. That as far as Alternative Road goes, we're unsure of what we're gonna be requesting them to install for a water line at this time.
Mr. Bory, I'll also send you a list of the other thing items that we talked about, just so that you guys all have it. Okay, I'll
Yes.
send you an email with extending the hydrants and moving that other
Yep.
hydrant.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
All right, moving on to Green Grow Group, Green Gold Group. Peter, you have a disclosure, and then I assume a discussion on 46 Worcester Road.
So, Green Gold Group is what was formerly called Healthwise, that's opening up at 46 Worcester Road.
This is the
which-
pink building?
This is down in Charlton City, correct?
Yes.
At the corner of,
Okay,
Across from across from McDonald's,
okay, yeah, the old laundromat.
the old laundromat, yeah, the old Partners Pizza building.
okay, I'm glad you
The old
clarified
massage
that for
parlor.
me,
Do they have a date yet?
I'm sorry?
Do they have a date yet?
No.
No.
Supposedly
Sorry.
6 to 8 weeks
Okay.
to open. So again, so the first thing I'd like to do is just put out there that Green Gold Group has approached my father for off-site parking that may be required if they go recreational. So I just want to put that disclosure out there, so it's because this probably happened about 6 weeks ago, so it wasn't, they didn't make that request a long time ago when they first came in front of you. So, again, just put that information out there that they're talking to my father about there's no sign lease at this time, it's just a possibility they may do off-site parking on my father's property. And so as Green Gold Group moves forward with their final occupancy permits, the Board of Health agent went there, and when they were in front of us, I guess the minutes are attached, in March 19th of 2018, so just about a year ago, they came in front of us for a water and sewer connection to let you know what was taking place at their site. At that time, because they were already connected to sewer, because it used to be a pizza place, a laundromat, their sewer usage was much higher than what it is now. There was gonna be no privilege fee assessed because their usage is gonna be much less for a small retail facility with 2 bathrooms. At the same time, we looked at possibly mandating them to connect to water under our water use bylaws, where because there's gonna be renovations done and the water line is available in the roadway, we could have chose to force them to connect to water at that time. At that time, because they weren't adding on, it's stated in the minutes, because they weren't adding on, because there was a substantial renovation, change in building size or parking spots, it was not required for them to connect to water. As part of going through their final sign-offs for the building permit, the Board of Health agent went there and said, you are a public water supplier because of the type of business you're running, because of the customers you have. Your public water supply well has to, it used to be a public water supply well. It went to DEP, in discussions with Muriel Stone, because water is available, Muriel Stone, the DEP is mandating them to connect to that public water line. So because you made a different vote previously,
Well, Rob and I voted to, what you said in the affirmative for them, and Alex voted against it.
yes,
But I wasn't aware that they were using, they had presented to us a small amount of water,
yes,
not enough to be a public water supply.
they're only using water for their restrooms, so it's still a small amount of water. But because they're serving so many people per day, it puts them into the public water supplier identifier.
I guess I don't understand
We
the
missed it.
public water supply.
No, we missed it, because the thing is the state public water supply, if you're on the Mohawk Trail and you're a gas station, then, and if you've got restrooms, the state says you're now a public water supply, especially if you have a coffee pot there and you sell coffee. So, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes,
So, all right, so so Mario says they've got to connect.
yes,
All right, so,
they're planning on connecting.
Okay,
I'm
done.
just kind of
good.
point of information, so you know, in case you hear from somebody else, that they're gonna be connecting. I believe the DEP is gonna allow them to open as they are and do the connection after they open, so. Again, I watched the last planning board meeting, and that's, the attorney from Green Go Group was there to talk about what they're gonna do, and I believe they're gonna open medicinal only for the first 4 to 6 weeks, in approximately 4 to 6 weeks. They've gotten their DEP stuff squared away with the public water supply well. They've gotten their DOT stuff squared away with their curb cut items they've had going on. So they're gonna open initially medicinal, and then open after that 4 to 6 weeks and try and go recreational. I believe, from what I saw from the planning board meeting, they have to go back to planning board and request the ability to open as recreational, because that wasn't part of their original approval. So that's gonna be something else they're gonna have to do on their own, that's kind of irregardless of us. But again, the main purpose for this was just because it's different than what you previously voted, and because I think DEP is very strongly pushing, from what Mariel said to me, if you're a public water supplier and you're a private public water supply well on your property, and the public water line is available in front of you, they are trying to mandate that you connect. They don't want these small public water supply wells floating out there. So I think moving forward in the future, as we look at what our bylaws say, where we can force them to connect, I think we're gonna have to consider that quite a bit when we make those decisions moving forward. I don't think there's any action that needs to be taken. I think they're planning on making a connection. I think we should be all set.
Maybe for the next meeting, we need to talk about the privilege fee they're gonna have to pay.
Sure. Okay.
Ready to move on, 2020 budget?
No questions on that? Okay, FY '20 budget. So we've discussed this a couple times in the past, where the roles associated with the water sewer administrator position and the superintendent position and the overlap. And again, as discussed, because of the construction work that's going on, it's been asked to kind of break down the costs associated with the administrator's position, and also come up with an estimated cost to hire someone from the outside to perform that same type of work. So I've attached the administrative salary from FY 2019 and his annual cost of benefits, which is health insurance and other associated payments required. And his total annual cost to this department is $81,700 approximately. As far as if we were to hire an outside inspector to come in, what I've gotten from estimates from engineering companies is $75 per hour. And estimating, I tried to run the timeline that they would work an average of 6 hours per day, based on, you know, the projects they're working anywhere from 8 to maybe 9 hours per day, and if there's a rain day per week or there's some downtime, I think with all the projects going on, you're gonna need that inspector at least 6 hours a day to just bounce back and forth between all the projects throughout the day. And I estimated that from March 15th through November 15th. So that's 36 weeks at 30 hours per week, and at $75 per hour, it comes to $81,000. I think the cost is comparable, and again, I just want to reiterate that the administrator has the ability to assist the department in many other facets of the day-to-day operations of our department, whether it be water or sewer, and also just help us carry out what needs to be done, rather than just doing on-site water inspections. As far as that goes, I haven't gotten any of the other finalized numbers from the finance director to talk about our budget in depth. Hopefully I will have those for your next meeting or two. But as far as this position goes, is there more information that the board wants from me for this?
Okay, I would like to just comment on the information. Is the continued inspection, where would that inspection be taking place, Peter? Is this for the Casella?
No, this is for, well, he's on both projects. So he's on the Berry Corner Road project, and he's also on the ExxonMobil project.
Okay, all right. Now, in the ExxonMobil, they've dedicated how much per year to McClure for inspections?
They have dedicated a certain amount. I believe it's 100,000.
100,000 per year.
For not just inspections, but construction oversight.
Construction oversight, right, but most of it's inspection. Because what...
Now that the design plans are completed, yes. Now it comes
right.
down to oversight and
Right.
overseeing field changes.
And do we know when the clock begins and ends on that per year?
No.
So that hasn't been determined.
No.
Okay, I think that's important. I did go to the construction meeting on Tuesday last week. I know Peter had to be somewhere else, and so I did go. And one of the questions I had for Steve Gregoire and also for Heather from Southbridge, Heather being the director of the DPW and Steve being the head water guy, exactly what's left up at the Casella construction. And they said they had this one street where they need to put the main in. I guess this is the
Eleanor Lane.
Eleanor Lane. And I guess that's gonna be tough going, a lot of it's ledge. Right. And so as far as all the other mains are in. So what's left is they need to go in, I guess, most of the curb stops were put in. Is that correct, Peter?
Yes, there's probably a dozen that they have to do on H-Foot Road. if
Okay,
that many.
okay, so that's 2-3 days' work.
Not up there, but it's.
Yeah,
there's a
okay,
ledge,
right, okay. So, I had talked to them about, first of all, Ty and Bond has a full-time inspector there themselves.
They do?
They do. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
They
right.
had one RE there for 2 crews.
Okay, and that, I asked them if they would provide us with a copy of that weekly report that person does.
I can forward you those.
Okay, so we get the weekly reports. So, so what's left is the laterals, which would go from the curb stops to the house,
Yes.
okay? And then all of those would be inspected by Southbridge, because
Yes.
when it comes time to turn it on, they're gonna turn it on. So, I have a problem with, well, not a problem, but my perception of what needs to be done there for inspection is little to none, as far as from our point of view. Because we're covered by what Ty and Bond is doing, and we're also gonna be covered, as far as the laterals go, by Southbridge. So the amount of hours that needs to be spent up there is minimal.
I'll just say that I was less than impressed with the coverage that Ty and Bond's residential engineer did for us last season, and he's not coming back this year, so I'm not sure what we're gonna get this year. And I think the fact that, while it may be redundant, I think that Steve showing up at an undetermined basis with his camera to take pictures keeps those guys on their toes, and it makes sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. And I think it's well worth what it's costing this department in every aspect of both projects, whether it's on private property or not, and whether it's Eleanor Lane, or whether it's the two crews working for ExxonMobil. Because those resident engineers, while they're supposedly there all day, they are not. And as contractors go, you can say what you want, but when someone shows up with a camera, everyone does work a little bit differently, so I think.
No, without a doubt,
I
without a
think
doubt.
for I'm not gonna say short money, but I think for what it's costing us to have Steve go out there throughout the day and take pictures and file those and just keep those there is well worth it, above and with everything else that's going on. Now, if Southbridge was gonna own these water lines, then maybe we wouldn't really care as much, but again, yes, they're new, yes, they're gonna be pressure tested, but we're also gonna own them and have to pay for anything that was done incorrectly.
I don't know if you were told this, Peter, you probably already know this, but they gotta go back and change all the curb stops, because the pressure test of these particular curb stops are only up to 150, and Southbridge requires them to be at 200. It's crazy how the identical problem happened right out here in our front yard, to where they had to go back and change them. But anyways,
That's based on this, that was because of the specs.
yeah, exactly, no,
Because the specs were written that referenced both curb stops, and that's why there was confusion,
that's why there was confusion.
yes. Because the 150 PSI curb stops were written into the specs.
But also the spec somewhere else said 200?
Yes,
Okay, it's one of those things.
yes.
And of course, the 200s cost more, so you,
The specs say 150, so that's
but
what they put on.
that's where I'm going if I was doing it, right, so, but they gotta change them all.
So there was just some confusion in
Right,
the specs.
right.
How many curb stops?
I'm not sure where they caught it, there's probably 40 or 50.
Now, you're referring to the fellow who's not coming back. Is that Frank,
No,
the guy from last, is Frank coming back?
yes,
'Cause Frank's pretty efficient from what I've seen him do
yes,
down on 169.
yes.
In,
No, Frank works for Kleinfelder. Frank will be
He works for
back.
Kleinfelder?
Yes.
Okay.
Frank will be back. Frank was not on the Casella job.
He's went on to the Casella job. Now, if we could get a guy like Frank, that's all we would need. I don't think we'd have to pay Frank $75 an hour. That's what I'm just saying that.
If you were
Doesn't-
hiring Frank through Kleinfelder, you would pay $75
Yeah,
per hour.
we're not going through Kleinfelder. It's just like Steve doesn't go through Kleinfelder.
Right, but Steve's not costing you $75 per hour.
Well,
What's the minimum amount of hours that they would come out?
is if,
Like 4?
I'm not sure how that would work, if they would come out 1 or 2 hours per day throughout the day. It depends what you worked out with the engineering company. But I think because of the way the work is being done throughout the day, I think you just.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
You want that
Oh,
continuity.
definitely.
the continuity as far as someone walking on the job?
Spot check at
The
different
spot
times
check?
throughout the day.
Yeah,
At different
Yeah.
times on different days. It's not always 7:30 every day, it's not always 11:30, it's not always 2 o'clock. It's
right. Right.
So that randomness, I think is very beneficial to us in keeping those contractors on their toes. Not that Albanese isn't doing a great job, because they are, but I don't know, that little bit of redundancy, I think, is worth it. And again, it's not like that's all he's doing. He also assists with the operations of the sewer department, and he also assists with
Yeah,
other inspections as
but-
well, so.
And again, Peter, again, I didn't bring this up, again, for no reason,
I
but,
understand.
but, you know, when we talk about the annual report, there were 13 new service connections last year. 13 new ones. And then when we talk about, as far as, that was for sewer and for water, there were 7. So that was 20 services that need to be inspected, make sure that the ties are correct, make sure that the log is filled in. But that's not a huge workload.
But it's one more thing. That's all.
No, I understand, it's one more thing. Again, I think we could do better. Just one commissioner's opinion, that's all. Okay, move on, please. I'm all set, unless anyone else got any more questions.
So the only other thing I had under the FY20 budget was based on the ExxonMobil settlement money. We discussed this a little bit in our last meeting, and I emailed some information out regarding the breakdown of the ExxonMobil settlement money, and Mr. Lemansky had some follow-up questions. So I attached the settlement summary to your packet, and it shows, I guess, how the money from the settlement was dispersed. And I think the biggest question Mr. Lemansky had was the breakdown for that $2.6 million that was reimbursed into the general fund. I did ask the finance director for that, and was told that there's a new policy in place that because the general fund is not directly under our control, per se, that we need to request it as make a public records request to get that information. So if the board wishes, if you could make a motion, I'll make a public records request to get how that $2.68 million has been, I guess, we know it's been reimbursed to the general fund, but how it's being held and if any
I'll
of
make
it's
a
been.
motion that we request the public records to give us the information how that was spent.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I'm a little curious.
Inquiring minds.
If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Peter, you have this document here. It says ExxonMobil Settlement Summary. Who authored this? Where did you get this?
Finance director?
The finance director. Okay, and where did she think she got it from?
She probably created it.
She created it, okay. I've got a document from the Town of Charlton Office of the Town Administrator, Robin Craver, and it says press release, April
I
12th.
believe I forwarded that to all of you as well.
Okay, good. Well, when you go to number 2, $7,750,000 cash settlement from ExxonMobil to the Town of Charlton. Note, the Board of Selectmen, Water Sewer Commission voted to use funds to pay off water debt, cancel all assessed water betterments, and credit those who have already paid. The remaining funds shall support the Water Department, i.e. operations, capital, expansion, design, as appropriated by town meeting. The remaining funds. Doesn't say anything in there about the remaining funds going to a reserve to reimburse the general fund.
Okay, and I'm just.
Okay, I'm just pointing this
No,
out.
so if you look at the summary,
What summary, this one?
yeah.
Well, there's no author on this, Pete. I'll look at it, but
So
there's no author.
it shows an $8 million reward,
Yep,
minus $12,000 for incidentals.
right,
It shows at Article 5 of a town meeting of, so here, all these transfers the first initial transfers in red were all done at the May 17th special town meeting. Article 5 was the water betterment reimbursement for $450,000, which you mentioned in that press release.
Yep.
Article 5, again, was $2.8 million to pay down the water debt,
Correct.
okay? Article 7 was to fund the water superintendent position, which is the money you use to reimburse the sewer department for Kevin Pecos,
Yep.
or
Waste of money.
some of it. And then Article 7 was to fund the water enterprise budget for $264,000, or to pay down the debt principal for 2018, FY18.
Yep.
And Article 7 was also to pay down the water debt interest for $38,000. So that was all approved at special town meeting, May 2017. After that, there was also $150,000 set aside for the water superintendent receipt reserve for appropriation account, which funded my salary for the last year. And then there was a $1.5 million fund that was set aside for water capital projects, receipt reserve for appropriation that we have. Now, the $2.6 million, I understand what you're saying, is I think some of that $2.6 million was set to pay back the general fund for when they paid the debt for the previous years, like you mentioned in our last meeting, before the betterments were assessed. There was probably 7 years of debt that was paid right before betterments were assessed.
Okay.
That was paid from the general fund. So how much of that $2.6 million offsets that reimbursement for that debt that was paid for the general fund, I don't know. But I will make the request to get the breakdown of how that was spent.
Well, again, this happened, we don't know where these numbers came from. I do agree that those red numbers certainly came from town meeting, okay, and was in the article that was, or articles 5 and 7 that were voted on, but I don't know where the decision came from that the remainder goes back in this other account, because according to what the original press release said, is the remaining funds shall go to support the water department, and listed all the things. So, for me, that's what I'm locked on right now.
Well, let's find out what the money was spent on, and
Well, we know what the money was spent on. The question is the balance in the account.
Right, and that's what Peter's gonna get for us.
Okay. And the,
oh, you don't know what the $2,683,000 was spent on.
no, it wasn't spent. No, that's sitting in an account. That's sitting in an account that doesn't say, it doesn't say, for the water department's operation, capital expenses, and design. Because that's what, in my mind, this is what it says here. That's where it should be, but
That's
it's
where it
not
should
there.
be, but it's not.
It's not. So,
I'll make that request.
okay. I'm not trying to have a family fight here, but it's what was stated, and says, this is what we're gonna do, and doesn't seem to be happening.
Was there a vote taken? Sorry.
A vote taken to
On
do
that
it.
motion?
On the motion, yes.
Thank you. All right. So lastly, the water line construction projects. Berry Corner Road, there's been no work taking place yet, and there's been really no discussion of when Ludlow Construction is gonna start work at this time. As soon as I know, I'll keep you informed. The school loop, Albanese Brothers is planning to start construction the week of March 11th with one crew. Whether they start in L. Stevens Road or Old Worcester Road, I'm not sure of yet. That's gonna be determined by Highway or DPW Superintendent Jerry Foskett, and where he feels more comfortable with them working based on the weather that we're gonna have coming in. They plan to have one more crew also getting trained that week. So the following week on March 19th, hopefully we'll have 2 crews going, and they're gonna start start going pretty good, trying to put in the water main extensions on L. Stevens Road and, again, Old Worcester Road. The Route 169 pump station, the majority of the site work for the pump station has been completed and is completed and has been for some time now. The prefab building is also complete. Unfortunately, we're waiting on the pump skid to be completed. There's a holdup with a control screen that's needed to operate the pumps. And my understanding is there's a delay for that one screen, which is gonna put us back to that pump station delivery till the end of June, beginning of July.
When that came up in the meeting, I made us think about it. It seems like we're gonna wait 5 weeks for a television screen. I asked them if in fact they had a specific date for the completion, and they did.
Right.
So they gotta meet the date. I made the point, make them meet the date. Put their feet against the fire and make them meet the date, period.
So,
I don't-
unfortunately, it's not our contract.
I
So
know
it's
it's
not
not
our
our
fire to hold
contract,
their feet
it's
to.
not our dollars, but
So
the thing is,
I can't, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think we have any,
they're just too, the problem I have, Peter, I'm sorry, it's just me, they're just too easy to say, yeah, that's okay. No, Snowflake, it's not. Do
But that's the
your
whole
job.
problem, that's the whole problem with the settlement agreement itself, is there is nothing. We don't know the fire.
No, we're involved, but we're not involved enough to make any, I guess, real decisions or to make anything happen, so.
Yeah.
We're a bystander. So,
Next meeting is March 11th.
sure, I just have one other thing to
Sure.
bring up, and that's, annual town election is gonna be held Saturday, May 4th, 2019. The last day to obtain nomination papers and submit is Thursday, March 14th. So,
To obtain and submit, so the drop, okay, excuse me. The nomination papers are available now.
Yes,
Okay, and they.
When is it opened?
I believe the first week of February, maybe
They were
February
available
11th.
February 11th.
February 11th.
Okay, yeah.
And
2
they're
weeks.
due in March, what'd you say, 14th?
Yeah.
So you get a month and the rest of the Monday through Friday days of that 14th. Actually, I believe the 14th is a Thursday because the town hall is closed Friday, so I could be
We have
wrong
one
about
opening?
that, but.
We have 2 seats
Two seats.
available, yes.
2 seats?
Yes, Mr. Gagner's seat and Mr. McKenzie's seat.
If I may, sadly, a former very dedicated worker, Jody St. George, his wife passed away,
Yes,
and calling hours, I believe, are tomorrow
Wednesday.
evening.
Wednesday, right?
I
Wednesday
thought the
afternoon.
funeral's Wednesday?
May- Yeah, I believe you're right. The calling hours are tomorrow and the
Tomorrow
funeral
in
is
Oxford.
Wednesday.
I don't know
Yes.
exactly what funeral home, but again,
Oh,
sad, real sad.
shoot, I
And,
remember.
Yes.
his wife, who was from Charlton?
Yes.
She's a Faithful?
Yes.
Yeah, very sad, but
Could someone from this department get a card and all of us sign it? It's the least we can do
Yeah.
for Jody. He
Definitely,
was
we can do that.
part of us for a number of years here, so.
and very
Yes.
dedicated.
Calling hours are Tuesday, February 26th, from 5 to 8 at Paradise.
At Paradise?
And then again from 10 to 11 on Wednesday
Yes,
At-
at St. Joe's.
at St. Joe's.
Yep.
Yeah, St. Joe's. Well, then, somebody make a final motion, please.
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No room for discussion on that one.
No room for discussion.
Good evening.